write tracks for Steve Swift reviews. He punched me twice in the face and asked for a duel. The pugilistic prophet with newbies diagnostics, like Scroobius Pip but less toxic. The UK comic shooting stars never lost it. It's 2025 and the internet still dies. Guys are chasing algorithms like a crack pipe high.
Wow. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chris. He's Steve. This is the Bees of Boxing with Steve Swift. So that can only mean one thing, that the Steve, when I say that that's Steve, yeah, that's Steve over there. That's Steve Swift, as in the Swift of Steve Swift, or the Steve of Steve Swift. Either way, Steve is with us today, and he's got an edge. He's got an edge today, ladies and gentlemen. He's fed up with everybody. Apparently, Carl Froch is no longer returning his calls. Jake Paul has put him on blast, saying that he's going to show up at his house and fight him personally, apparently, because, you know, he's looking for an opponent. So, I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of things because there are a lot of fights that are coming up and fights that happened. I got a question for you, Steve, and that's going to be, is Vergil Ortiz the real deal, or is he going to have a fraud check coming up? We're going to find that out when we discuss that. It looks like the heavyweights, some are fighting and some aren't fighting. And this is weird and wild, but the show must go on. If you're Frank Warren, shout out to Frank, getting ready to 45 years he's going to celebrate, and what fight does he have coming up to celebrate that? We're going to talk about that. And just because of this past weekend, we have to talk about a little Misfits boxing, and maybe just maybe there is yet another name to be thrown in the hat of this Jake Paul fiasco that is his boxing career. So let's get right into it. Steve, how in the heck are you doing, my brother?
I'm salty, Steve Smith, this evening. I'm just in a bad mood. I've been in a bad mood all day, and you know, and Mike Tyson wanting to have another go at Jake Paul is not helping matters.
I mean, yeah. What did you hear about this?
Well, he'll do better next time. Apparently, he'll do better. Well, I mean, he can't do much worse except to seize up 10 seconds into the first round rather than 30. He wants to fight him again and fight Money Mayweather. That fight's gone, folks. I'll tell you that now.
But let me ask you this: like, can you really expect anybody to try to sell a fight like that after Mike's already come out and said, you know, the whole thing was a work, right? Hey, pay no attention to what I said before, but this time I'm going to get him for sure. What is this? Fucking Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner all of a sudden?
Well, he also said in the same discussion, he also said, I was really sick going into that fight, and then I left it all in the gym too much. I trained too hard. Well, you can't have it both ways, can you? Because if you're really ill, you won't be able to train too hard, will you? I mean, it's not like the BBC allegedly putting two bits of a speech together, allegedly. It's ridiculous, and I can't imagine who would want to watch that when they stunk the joint out last time.
I think he also might have made reference possibly to the fact that he was on psilocybins when he agreed to take that fight in the first place. So what is Mike on when he's saying he's going to do this again, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, some of his own gummies, I hear they're delicious. I do. I have not had the pleasure yet, but I hear they're delicious.
You might get a package in the mail from Mike himself now. You never know.
Well,
now you've mentioned him.
That would be nice.
But it is just another part of the Jake Paul Farrago. Welcome, folks, to the Jake Paul Farrago, and here's your host, Jake Paul. So it's not good.
Well, then I'll tell you what. Then let's get into this right now, since we're talking about Jake, and we're talking about stuff that's, you know, possibilities, and we talked about fighters working in Misfits boxing, and we've talked about who we thought could be a potential for doing a Jake Paul fight recently because of the Ryan Garcia talk. No, that's not going to happen. You know, we talked about that last week. You can go back. Thank you to everybody who sent messages and stuff like that. Keep them coming. Thank you to everybody who's watched. Thank you to everybody who's listened on all of your podcast providers. But we talked about this last week when we said that it's not going to be an Anthony Joshua. It's not going to be a Ryan Garcia or anything like that. And then we threw out some wild ones out there. I think I had even mentioned Paulie Malignaggi. But it looks like there may be somebody in the recent past that has caught my attention that I wasn't even thinking about, Steve. So this past weekend, there was a Misfits boxing event, and it was headlined by Andrei Arlovsky. And if anybody knows who Andrei is the pit bull. I mean, Andrei had custom made music written for him. He had the fantastic mouth guard, a guy who's a pioneer in the world of mixed martial arts. And since leaving the UFC, is undefeated. He's done some bare knuckle stuff. He's done some boxing here and there. And now he's just, beat up a YouTuber, if you were, one of these, reality show, whatever it was. One of these guys, and smashed him. Didn't look, spectacular or anything like that. Certainly did not look like Vergil Ortiz Jr. And we're going to talk about him in a bit. But he looked good enough to make you go, hey, wait a second. Does this guy fit all of the criteria of somebody that Jake Paul would fight? Well, let's think about it. Former UFC fighter, so MMA guy, right there, boom. Older than dirt in the world of combat sports, in the reality of things, right? Probably clearly looking for a payday if he's bouncing around and now he's doing Misfits boxing. Shout out Misfits boxing. I'm sure you pay quite well, but it's not what he was getting before, and you know that. So this guy completely fits that criteria, and a name of which he could make this happen on. Because the Gervonta Davis thing is not happening, because Gervonta Davis blew the script off of that one, and Jake had to cancel it. I don't care what anybody says about I'm not going to give this woman abuser a platform, blah, blah, blah. If you or nobody there did your due diligence and knew that Gervonta's had allegations and charges and everything going back, 5-6 years, you knew exactly what you were doing. It happened when Gervonta Davis made you nervous and said, wait a second, you think this is going to be a script? Now, I ain't going to play by your script. So a lot of people are speculating that might be the case and why that fight was canceled. What do you think?
Several things. I think that Gervonta Davis, I think that the lack of interest in Gervonta Davis promoting that fight and the feeling of boxing's just shite would have created a clowning, perhaps, or attempt to clown of Jake Paul. But I think Arlovsky's a really bad move because he's a bit of a monster. And I don't think that I don't think Jacob, I don't think that Jake wants that. I don't think he's ready for that. However, he has lost control of the narrative. He's lost control of the narrative. And he was doing really well. He was in this position before he pulled the Chavez Jr. fight out of his arse. Remember, he was not out of his arse because he pulled it out of his hat, really, because it was great. Mm. And, that was something that really brought him back up there. But now people are starting to take control of the narrative, Andre Ward. And also, mentioned there's an article that mentions 8 people, and the usual people are in there. The Nate Diaz situation is ridiculous because he said, "Okay, Nate Diaz, he said he'd step up. Sadly it's not happening. I wish some of you pussies would step up." Nate Diaz then said, "It's on. You're dead." No, it's not on, Jake. Nate, we're not doing it. Right. We're doing it. No. So there's that, and he's the name that's come up. And he needs to get this name because he's also had some bad news with Claressa Shields recently. So he needs to get this opponent done. Name that came up yesterday, KSI. And it's been booted out of Misfits. Apparently.
Well, that's Oh my God, that is the biggest work since the Montreal screw job, ladies and gentlemen. Like, shout out Montreal screw job. I was there. Yeah. But that's a different story, not for this show. But you can check out some of those other shows where we do talk about that over here on the Law Live Wrestling. It's funny that you mentioned that about KSI and Misfits Boxing, because now they're setting up for this. I mean, because KSI out, Andrew Tate in as the new CEO and facing Chase Demore for their heavyweight championship. First of all, I think that sets up perfectly, because you couldn't have the CEO of Misfits Boxing doing something with his bestie's brother in MVP, because that could, lead to some weird conflicts of interest where it looks like you're doing business together. So you oust him, you bring in this, the top G, you bring him in. The whole thing screams of a work, and you may be correct on that, because then it frees up KSI and Jake Paul to go do this fight that they've been talking about for who knows how long. You may be onto something there, Steve. That's a wild one, because I was thinking about that one earlier.
This is why Paul's so quiet, because he's going to pull something out. So he needs to do it because the quieter he is, the more people go to fill that vacuum, and the less in control of the narrative he is, and that's awful for him. So you do a bit of back channel stuff, don't you? With not officially, but you say, hey, KSI and Misfits get a bit or something. They get, people know, but not really, and they can go and do their thing. And KSI and that would actually be a fight that, I mean, it wouldn't sell an enormous amount, but it would keep the aficionados the influencer aficionados happy.
Yeah, it keeps everybody happy there. I think Jake Paul walks through KSI in that fight, so it fits his narrative just fine as well. It's not nearly as exciting, but it also kind of, if it does go down that way, and now all of a sudden you have that fight happen, it kind of puts Jake in his place a little bit by the boxing community saying, no, you ain't ready for this yet, son. And that to me is kind of a bit of a shame, because I want to see him in there. I want to see him, do what it is that he says he wants to do. Absolutely. By all means, go out there and give it a shot. But it's a tough one to get into, because, bigger and more proficient dudes have tried and failed miserably.
Yeah, and you have, as you say, got that kind of humbling of Jake Paul, which means that the boxing community will give him an easier ride.
But it's a humbling. It's a humbling almost on the back end of it, behind the scenes. Because if we saw it and you break down that last press conference with Gervonta Davis, and the way that you break down what he was talking about, what the from the plants in the crowd, asking questions clearly. Hey, Jake, I wanted to just give a shout out to the great things you're doing with your charity work. And Gervonta Davis was clearly calling all of this stuff out, which made Jake a little nervous, thus looking for a way out. What better way? It just happened to fall at that perfect time, unfortunately, for Gervonta Davis. And that fight is just not something that Gervonta was like, wait a second, you think that this? Nah, son, who's paying me? You're paying? Okay. All right. Okay, I see what you think you're doing here, but that ain't going to be how this works. I'm a dude who will throw real hands, and he is. 147 pounds or not, but listen. At the end of the day, boxing is still boxing, and boxing has already just kind of told Jake, maybe you should just stick to promoting right now. Who knows? because that's the only fight that he's got on if you go to MVP Promotions, the only fight that he's got is, Amanda Serrano fighting down in Puerto Rico. Shout out to that fight where they finally get to fight by men's rules in full rounds, full time, full everything. So, shout out to that for all the hard work and making that happen. But Jake, maybe you need to stick to promoting. Now, speaking of promoters, it looks like your favorite promoter, one Mr. Eddie Hearn, is going to go back to court again because his buddy, that's right, Chris Eubank Jr., likes to spout off at the mouth again before his fight, because this is happening this weekend. Unfinished business, Chris Eubank Jr. against Conor Benn on DAZN. Here's my first question for you, Steve. Why are we doing this?
We're doing it because it was a surprise that the fight was good last time.
Sure.
So they deserve it, and they deserve to make some money. I mean, I wasn't bothered about the fight until all the shenanigans with the ambulance came out. I mean, there are two reasons why I love this. The first one's the ambulance thing, because people say that Chris Eubank Jr. clearly is intelligent and can put a sentence together, pretty much like his pa. And he's great to listen to, but they say he's a psychological genius. He isn't, though, is he? He cracked somebody. He cracked Conor Benn, upside the head with an egg last time, and this time he's talking about how Eddie Hearn and his merry men stopped his ambulance leaving Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when he was in the back and had to go to hospital. Well, he's released some footage, Tidster, which is, I'm no Sherlock Holmes, but really, I can't really see how because it's footage at the back of an ambulance. He might not be in it. He might. And as I podcasted, what you don't get, it's not moving, and someone's going, open the fucking doors. But you don't get Eddie Hearn at the front going, oh, no, this place is not moving. I'm not going to let this thing go. Here, you are my merry men. I'm not. He doesn't speak exactly like that, but it's a fairly good impression. I ain't going to let this vehicle go anywhere. So there's that, which is ridiculous. And Hearn's not very happy about it. And it's terrible psychology. The other thing is, though, that Conor Benn has allowed, I'm laughing when I'm talking about it, has allowed Chris Eubank Jr., with all that ridiculous shenanigans, to get into his head. And he keeps saying, he's done two interviews now without Chris being there. He's done two interviews in which he said, I'm calm now. I'm really calm. I need to be calm in the next fight, which he does. I don't want to jump in. And both times, the first time, I think it was Josh from DAZN talked about a tune-up fight. He went, tune-up fight? Why do I need a tune-up fight? And you could see Josh go, wow, just a minute, mate. And then I saw one today in which he said, I can't wait I never have to see him again. I will never, ever have to see him again. And I thought, I don't really think you're that calm. Open your third eye, mate. You get your chakras realigned. I don't really think I think he's a bit angry.
And that in itself is wild to me, because he's already making Chris Eubank come back down to it's the same weight issue stuff that they had before, right? I think I heard that the payout on this one is like 60-40 split for Chris over Conor. So I heard 10 million for Chris and 8 for Conor Benn. Now we'll see how much of that Chris Eubank is going to lose before the fight happens for saying shit like this. Because what he fails to forget is that in this day and age, there's these things called checking in and checking out and timestamps and cameras. And it was literally already done and proven that it was 45 minutes from the time he left the ring to the time he checked in to the hospital. So I get it. Frustrating as hell when you just want to go and you're like, why aren't we leaving? Why aren't we leaving? Well, there has to be procedures, because they didn't just let anybody hop in an ambulance and stroll out of there.
And there's no evidence that Eddie Hearn was anywhere to be seen. You know, it's very easy for him to say, and he's quite right for him to say, well, I wasn't even there. Because, as I say, he's not at the front. You know, he's not holding the ambulance back with a crocodile of arms. Plus, Conor Ben said to them, which I find hilarious, I didn't even have an ambulance. I wasn't even in an ambulance last time. No one talks about that, do they? What, were you on a push bike, mate? Or some kind of fucking Segway? You know, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Could you imagine all of a sudden Eddie Hearn, pulls the Vince McMahon? It was me the whole time, Chris. Like, absolutely ridiculous to think that Eddie wouldn't have his bases covered in this one. But you know what? One thing's for sure. We're not talking about this fight nearly as much, and it's already on to us this weekend. And that's because our point, yet again, proven. The last time this fight happened, we said this fight has nothing to do with these two young boys, and of which, to us, young, to the boxing world, not so much anymore, but it has nothing to do with them. It was about the dads. And this time, there's no talk. There's no focus on the dads. And you know what that means? There's no talk. There's no focus on the fight. There has been nothing about this. Relatively squat.
A few days ago, tickets still available, folks, apparently. And I have to say, Carl Froch actually made some sense. He actually said, no one's talking about it. And he's right. By the way, he talked recently on Clubhouse Boxing, first episode. It's very good, actually. Not as good as our show, of course, but very good. He said he was there with Spencer Oliver, and he said he would jump into a fight with Jake Paul if there was £10 million on the table. And he was called out. He was called out to say, well, why don't you ring him now then? Well, I haven't got his number. He said, they said, well, look in the camera and call him out. And he just went, well, I mean, he continues to shit and will not get off the pot. He's doing it again, calling somebody else out and then not following through. It's actually following through, but it didn't look good for him.
Wow. Well, you know what? You know who has been at it for quite some time, Steve? Your good buddy Frank Warren. Good old Frankie Dubs, as I know that you guys call him in the fine circle of friends that you are when you all hang out for prime rib. Well, Frankie Dubs, it looks like, has been at it for 45 long years. And he ain't done yet. He ain't. Did you?
I was giving you the V for victory side because he's so good. I wasn't flicking the V like Oasis used to.
And so I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, Steve, this buddy of mine, Sean, and we talk boxing like we do here. And he had asked me a question. He's like, hey, what the heck is going on with Moses? Like, there's nothing being said about it. And this is a guy we both, agree, and we've talked about it here before, that's a dude that needs to keep fighting right now. He absolutely needs to keep this pace going because he's on a roll. People are talking about him, and he's getting there. He's 13-0 now with 11 of those fights coming off of knockout. I think he's only been I think his total entrance time is probably longer than his total fight time. It seems like, you know what I mean? He's taken longer to walk to and from the ring than he has actually being in the ring in those 13 fights. And it turns out that Frank Warren also heard this message that we were sending over the airwaves. And here we go. It's going to be on DAZN, Queensbury Promotions, the Magnificent 7 2026 with Moses Itauma taking on a young, big American in Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine Franklin, no slouch, 24-2 with 15 KOs. A lot of people may not remember this, or maybe you do, and you should. Franklin most famously known for going the distance with AJ just a couple of years ago. So there's a guy who's been in there, and we're talking 2023 AJ, not 2025 AJ, and he went the distance. And AJ's got the power to knock somebody out. So this is a guy who's going to be a challenge, probably the biggest challenge to date, obviously, which is what you're looking for with a young kid like Moses that you want to do. What do you think? How does this work out for him?
I heard a podcast with Frank, and shout out to Frank, fantastic, and a very savvy, intelligent individual who has survived in a very difficult business really well. Knows what he's doing. A lot of time for Frank. Tough as fucking nails as well. Don't rub him up the wrong way. Extraordinary. He said, with Moses, I just want to see him get people out of there. Paraphrasing, but then he said, but he will meet somebody at some point who will take him the distance. This guy could do that. I mean, I think he's beatable for Moses, but it's definitely important for Moses to have something to aim at, because Fabio Wardley, for a small period, became the new Moses Itauma, didn't he? And Moses Itauma's got to be thinking, both promoted by the same gentleman. So,
maybe a little different though. Because I think Fabio's been. I think people look at Fabio Wardley as more of a vet in the business than he really is, just because of the amount of years. Whereas like Moses is still really young in this business, so you still look at him as like a rookie. You know what I mean? So it's the belovedness right now. Yes, you're absolutely right. I think that Fabio just stole all of Moses's heat, with his last victory, and Moses needs to get some of that back. Yeah, this is the perfect chance for it for sure.
But I have to say, I like the idea of the Moses Itauma fight, but I just podcast about this. I just want to say something. It's Derek Chisora's last fight. Where is he now? Have I missed something?
Yep.
Because, at one point they were saying Moses should fight Derek. No, because he'll knock him into the middle of next week. So no, but we've kind of forgotten about the 15th and the 13th of December, haven't we? He was supposed to be fighting. Now he isn't. It's all gone a bit quiet over there. And really, let's remember, it's his final fight. And whatever you think of Derek Chisora, he has been a warrior for boxing. And I don't want to, I want something to be announced tomorrow, please, because he's going to lose all that heat at the final match.
Well, the announcement, yes, they were supposed to do him and Dillian White for a third time, and give Chisora what he wants. Let him go out that way. For sure. Fine. No problem. But he said it would only happen if the paperwork was right. And up to this point, the paperwork isn't right. And they've pulled, there's nothing over at Queensbury about it. Any mention of any of it is gone. So I think at this point where we are, we're in the middle of November. A month away is a little tight to try to get this together. I don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form. And the thing is that, then what do you do? What do you do with him? You got to get February at the latest. Otherwise, Derek Chisora might as well just, not even bother with that 50th fight and just go down as a legend who should have had that 50th fight, but never did. Right?
It's a massive shame, really, at the moment. And I understand things change, but he has been forgotten, I think, here. And, all the impetus now is going into the Moses Itauma card, and that's fair enough. Understand that, and it's being sold on the 45th year of Frank's boxing work, and that's fantastic. But Derek deserves something, and
I think that the fight on that card, as much as they know that this is Moses's, it's time for him to shine. Probably going to end quickly. So what do you do? Anytime you look at these kind of cards where they've loaded them up like this, chances are you need to look at that co-main event. And the co-main event on this card, Willie Hutchinson against Ezra Taylor, that is going to be an absolute stunning fight. Now we saw, if you paid attention, if you watched the what fight was it? The Buatsi Zach Parker fight. They were both in the crowd, lipping each other off. And now that fight's going to happen. And it's going to be a hell of a fight. You wait and see. Trust me.
And the thing about Frank is that compared, perhaps, maybe I'm doing him a disservice, and he'll come at me, Eddie. But you kind of feel with Frank that he's kind of steeped in it, and Eddie's not yet steeped in it. You know, Eddie will do headliners and just under headliners and all that. Whereas Frank, the way he was talking about that fight on the podcast I heard, you know, he knows so much about those fighters, and he was talking about what kind of fight it could be, and he just knows, and that comes with spending your whole life in the fight game, and that's incredible.
Well, remember when I said watch out for November, because November is going to be wild, and it's because of this one right here. It's because of this one right here. The Ring 4 with David Benavidez, Anthony Yard at the top, Brian Norman Jr. against Devin Haney, Abdullah Mason against a guy finally who could punch with two hands, and Sam Noakes. The showing out of Jesse Bam Rodriguez against Fernando Martinez. I mean, if you don't know anything about boxing and you just want to sit back and watch a card, November 22nd, Riyadh Season presents The Ring 4. I mean, this is exactly the card that you're going to want to watch. What are you looking most forward to in this card, Steve Swift?
Oh, Devin Haney versus Mr. Norman. I mean, I watched the head-to-head earlier today. He's funny. Mr. Norman is so funny, and Devin Haney doesn't get any of that. And he started because he's so laid back, and he has that southern accent and all of that, and has the turn of phrase. And Haney was getting a little bit stronger, and then at the end of it, Brian Norman Jr. just said, "But you, it worst be effective, but you stole Floyd Mayweather's shtick." And Devin Haney went crazy at that, you know, because it hits home, doesn't it? And I tell you, Mr. Norman also hits home, and I suspect he hits Devin Haney's face over and over again.
I don't think it's going to be that many overs. I don't think that Devin Haney is going to withstand past the 8th round in this one. I think it ends before that. I think that people forget to, you know, realize that this dude, this Brian Norman Jr. is the real deal. There's a new batch of dudes out there that are taking all of this stuff very seriously and very, very much by storm. And that brings me to the next topic here before we go, Steve. I wanted to get into this because we saw this past weekend kind of a showing out. I mean, in some people's eyes, not so much mine. We saw a fight between Vergil Ortiz Jr. and Erickson Lubin, where Vergil Ortiz Jr. literally took less than 2 full rounds to dispatch of Erickson Lubin, who, listen, Lubin used to be a good fighter. Absolutely. Is he anymore? No, he took a howitzer to the face, and should probably call it a wrap. If you're not out there for more than 2 rounds against a guy like that. What did you think of this fight? Did Vergil Ortiz show you anything in this fight that makes everybody go, "Oh, this is the guy"?
No, because of Erickson Lubin. So no, it you know, it clearly was, everybody played their part very well. And I thought Erickson Lubin had about a minute in the first round where he thought, "Oh, I'm staying away from this guy." And then it was one of those horror films where you look out the window and there's nothing. And then you look out the window and the monster's halfway to.
Sure.
Then you look out the window again and the monster's right here. It was suddenly, he's in my fucking face and he's hitting me to the body. And he did. I mean, one of the things I did like was his body work. he did an awful lot of body work. I thought it was a really good stoppage. I think that, that there's nobody saying, oh, the ref jumped in too soon on that one. That was a really good stoppage because he was out on his feet and it was about time. No, I don't think we saw anything that made me go, oh, Vergil is fabulous, because I already thought Vergil was fabulous. So, I thought he might do that, and he did.
Well, yeah, because everybody forgets that, like, the guy's already been, the distance with guys like Madrimov and Boachuk. And that right there should have made everybody realize that Vergil Ortiz Jr. is the real deal. And then we saw what happened afterwards when it looks like somebody wants to come to the dance. And that's Mr. Jerome Boots Ennis, Philadelphia's own, and we love us some Boots Ennis. Shout out Boots over here at the Bees of Boxing, because it's Boots. That's a B of boxing right there. I don't know how more you want me to spell it out, but he got in the ring. Things got a little heated. He wants to fight Vergil Ortiz Jr. Do you think this is a good fight? And do you think that this could go down as a fight of the year candidate, or do you think it goes down as a fraud check?
No, I think it goes down as a fight of the year candidate. It's the only fight. I did think that Boots Ennis had a little bit of trouble with his hood. I thought he'd made a decision regarding that hoodie, and then he was fiddling with it a bit. He needs to come to me. You can fold that sucker back, and then you'll be okay. You'll have a little bit of your hair, and you'll be able to get the whole thing. It won't be pushing your face down. But that is a fight of the year contender, and the only fight out there. It's the one that, there are some fights that you say, oh, of course. And that one is an oh, of course. I think it's a really, I think Boots Ennis comes through, but I think it's I think it's tough. I think Boots Ennis has got more skill that he can put to very nasty use, but I think that it's close.
It's interesting though when you think about it, because that is the 154 division, right? And everybody kind of dances around the fact that you've still got Callum Walsh. You've still got Keith. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say. Unfortunately, you still have Keith Thurman, who's decided to come back, and nobody ever talks about Bakary Samake, French fighter who is, the Ring Magazine #1. They're going to put some juice behind that guy. So remember that name coming up. Now, Vergil Ortiz Jr., a interim champion. Boots Ennis, also an interim champion. So I don't know how that works. Are we unifying interim freaking belts now? Right?
Yeah, this is like is it the WBO or the WBA regular and super championships, heavyweight championships? What? Let's just have one championship, shall we? It's a bit ridiculous.
And really, at the end of the day, it seems like all of these other guys want to make fights with all of these other guys because nobody really wants to fight Sebastian Fundora. I would fight him right now because I know he's got busted hands, but that's beside the point.
He's going to be one of those avoided fighters who never gets what he should get. He's going to be one of those, isn't he? You can tell, because he's a puzzle. You can't, having said that, with what Vergil Ortiz did, it was against Lubin. Let's make that clear. But his speed in getting close and cutting that distance, you can get underneath that and come in. Then you can work that body as he did, and Fundora's never had that. So
he kind of did. He kind of did in that first Tim Tszyu fight, the one that ended in the cut very badly, because Tim managed to get inside of those things, and that's how he ended up catching an elbow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's exactly what you've got to be able to do. I think Ortiz probably is a lot better at cutting an angle, getting inside and cutting an angle than Tim is. There's no doubt about that. And I think that's where he's going to have the most success against a tall guy like that. But against a guy like Boots Ennis, that could be a different story, right? I hope that they make this fight sooner than later. Listen, Boots just fought. He just fought last month, so they're on the same timeline. Vergil Ortiz Jr. only put in 2 freaking rounds. You could make this fight for December. You could make this fight for December and make up for the fact that Steve Swift is not getting Dillian White and Derek Chisora. So give him Boots and give him Vergil.
I would love that, except let me tell you that there are some articles at the moment with Virgil's camp saying, well, we might go for a Charlo, actually, if we can't get Boots. So that when people are already saying, if we can't get that, we'll go for that, you kind of worry it's not going to happen, don't you?
Okay, so then what are they going to do? They're going to throw in Earl Spence in there as well?
I think that was mentioned as well.
I've heard that name too.
Yeah.
And I've heard, people say, oh, let's make it an all Texas affair and have all 4 of them go out there and fight. And I was like, Boots is from Philly, you fucking idiots. Fucking humans, Steve. Humans.
Yeah, is that not a Philadelphia in Texas? I don't know these American places.
There probably is.
I mean, there's a Manchester in America, isn't there? Isn't there a Manchester in Canada as well?
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah.
There you go. We used to have an empire. Remember that? We used to have an empire.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. They also used to not have to sell off their goods to cover up their debts.
I mean, there was that. I mean, we had there was that. That was the tulip fiasco. But remember, we used to have an empire, and now we've got Australia. We've got Grenada. No, we've not got Grenada. We've got Malta. What else have we got? Is that it? New Zealand? We've got New Zealand. I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Falklands. Got the Falklands. I think that's it.
There's a couple of Virgin Islands, maybe.
I mean, possibly. I don't keep up with these things.
I don't know. Is Cayman yours anymore?
Cayman's not ours. Oh, no, actually, it might be.
Yeah.
Is it?
I think it is.
Turks and Caicos. Is it that one?
It all sounds like it'd be taken away by the side of a hurricane. Hey, also the name of a great boxer, ladies and gentlemen. See how we bring it all back around? All right. So listen, before we wrap this whole thing up, Steve, I would be remiss if I did not ask you what is on the agenda for Steve Swift and World Weary Guy 1.
Do you know what? And a lot of people have liked this, which has been lovely, because I got a book to read because I edit a books page in a magazine, and I got an AC/DC, actually very well done, all the albums, all the songs thing, and I know AC/DC very well. They're a favourite band of mine. I've really always disliked, for those about to rock, all that. I really disliked it, right? I mean, I heard them playing at Donington from my house.
Okay.
So I've always disliked it, and I visited it again yesterday and thought, oh, this has got groove, and I loved it. I really liked it. Not all of it, but I really liked it. See, Flick of the Switch, the next album, is probably my favourite AC/DC album, because I like albums that nobody else likes. But I'm revisiting that. I'm going to revisit Stiff Upper Lip tomorrow, which I've listened to half of it, and I've never really liked it, and that's not saying. So I'll tell you all about it. Plus, Royal Republic have a side band called the Blast Beaters, Corpse Paint. Not only have they done that, a black metal band with the corpse paint and all that, but they've decided as that band to cover 5 disco tracks. So you've got I'm So Excited, you've got Staying Alive, and the last one they've got is Go West, which is it's just great. So the whole thing culminates in a 5 video. So it's the end of a 5 video story. They're all on YouTube, and I'll be talking about that because they are one of the best bands out there at the moment. If you like something a bit weird, and I'll be talking at length about that.
Well, all right. And all those roads, once you get into those bands, all those roads leads back to Kraftwerk anyways. Side story for you about AC/DC. back in 1996, maybe it was, when we started doing the Law Live Audio Wrestling. I did an AC/DC karaoke version for a WCW show that we were doing a segment on. Okay, on the show, WCW Wrestling used to have a show, like their Thursday night show was called Thursday Night Thunder. And I did a karaoke version of AC/DC's Thunderstruck version for that show, but the song was called Thunder Sucks because it was such a god-awful program.
It was.
And it went with a god-awful song.
Do you not like Thunderstruck?
I'm not the biggest AC/DC fan. But that's only because I'm not the biggest Brian Johnson fan. I'm more old school, live fast, die young, and leave a semi-beautiful corpse behind.
Yes, my wife would agree with you entirely on that. Yeah. I can take both because I know what they are, what they both are. But I mean, there isn't a. I mean,
Brian Johnson always just came across to me as the guy that you found at the pub to fill in for the cover band. Whereas, Scott he's a rock star.
Well, my missus was, even when she was quite young, would follow the bands around, and they played Liverpool, and they played the Liverpool Adelphi. They stayed at the Adelphi Hotel. There's a big stairway, a big stairs up there, and she was waiting downstairs with all the fans. They were always really lovely to their younger fans, signing things. Bon Scott came downstairs with a blonde on either arm. So, he lived it. He lived it all. It's extraordinary.
Absolutely. Wonderful stuff. All right. Steve? Yes?
I also, I'll premiere this for you next week. I'll have already put it out, but I have an advert now for my podcast.
Oh, well, you're going to have to send that so that we can run this on here. 100%. And speaking of things that are adverts and whatnot, I would be remiss if we did not shout out. You hear it in the background there. That's the third. Check out all of the great work that Laz does over on YouTube at Laz the Third, not spelled out THIRD. No, the number 3 RD. That's how we find him over there. So please do all of that. To everybody else, thank you so much for joining us this week, every week, listening to us on all of your podcast providers or watching us here on YouTube as you do. Thanks for putting up with our faces. One thing that you always, I'd be remiss if I wasn't a reminder.
When it comes to the children, Wu-Tang is for the children. We teach the children.
ODB always says it best. The only way to protect your neck is to tuck your chin.